right, we're going to continue on now. Again, July 15, 2011, that's today's date. And my name is Frank DiMora. Welcome to my show. Now we're going to turn to Revelation chapter 16, verse 8. It says this: "The fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and the sun was given power to scorch people with fire." In Revelation chapter 7, verse 16, it says this: "Never again will they hunger, never again will they thirst, and the sun will not beat on them, nor any scorching heat." Now, these scriptures from the book of Revelation are showing us that there's going to be intense heat, and we know what brings, what happens when you have intense heat. You get droughts. Droughts cause famines, and all of these things are signs that Jesus Christ talked about. We know that there's other places in the scriptures. When you get into my book in chapter 5, you'll see all of these, all this information there for you. It talks about the massive situations of droughts, famines, and pestilence, and all of these things associated with and as a result, actually, of the sun, the intensity of the sun, sores forming on the body that the Lord talked about, these sores that the people living in the last days would have to confront. And again, we're talking about in the tribulation, but we're in those birth pain periods right now where we're leading up to the climax of the Revelation. Now in Mark 13:8, it says this: "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be earthquakes in various places, and famines." And these are the beginning of birth pains. So we are seeing the beginning of these things that Jesus Christ talked about. And then in Revelation chapter 6:6, and it says, "I heard the voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou that hurt not the oil and the wine." So we know that in the last days, because of the famines, we see the pestilence, and we see the intense sun, the droughts, lack of water. We know this because Jesus said in Revelation chapter 7, verse 16, again, "They will never again be hungry." So we know that they were hungry. These are the people who came out of the tribulation. It says, "Never again will they thirst." And we know that they were thirsty. And why were they thirsty? Because the Lord showed us the sun is going to scorch the earth. And then it says that the sun will not beat on them anymore, or scorching heat. So that's a given. We know that the thirst will go away, the hunger will go away when they're in heaven. These people have to come out of the tribulation. These are the people who refused, by the way, the mark of the beast during the tribulation. They came out of the tribulation, and God is showing them now that they're never going to hunger, thirst, and no more heat, scorching heat on them. So, knowing all this, I've been warning for years that watch the news, because you're going to see temperatures go up just like the gold and the silver, and all these other prophecies that are also being fulfilled. So let me read you some information that came out today about this issue of the heat and what's taking place. It says this: "A combined global land and ocean average surface temperature for June 2011 was the 7th warmest on record at 16.54 Celsius, which is 60.94 Fahrenheit, which is 0.58 Celsius, 1.04 Fahrenheit above the 20th century average of 15.5 Celsius and 59.9 Fahrenheit. And then June 2011 was the 316th consecutive norm or month with the global temperature above the 20th century average. The last month with below average temperature was February of 1985. The June worldwide average land surface temperature was 0.98 Celsius, 1.6 Fahrenheit, 60 Fahrenheit, above the 20th century average of 13.3 Celsius, 55.9 Fahrenheit, the 4th warmest on record. Now, the global average ocean surface temperature was the 10th warmest in June on record, at 0.47 Celsius, at 0.85 Fahrenheit above average. Neither El Nino or La Nina conditions were present during June 2011. And according to the NOAA's Climate Prediction Center, these ENSO neutral conditions, or natural conditions, are expected to continue in the northern hemisphere in 2011. In other words, expect the warming of the ocean and changes, and all these changes are causing havoc in the weather, by the way. I'm not making this up. This is what they're writing about. And then it goes on to say the first half of the 2011, January through June, was the 11th warmest on record for the combined global land and ocean surface temperatures. Separately, the worldwide average ocean temperature was also 11th warmest January through June, and the worldwide average land temperature was the 12th warmest on such period. So are you seeing the patterns? We're getting hotter and hotter. The glaciers are melting. All of this information is in my book, by the way. I mean, this just came out. This particular article won't be, but there's a host of information that's there that shows you the same evidence. It goes on. Warmer than average conditions dominated the globe during June of 2011, with the most potent warmth present across most Russia. Now get this, and there's a reason why I'm pointing this out. Russia, Europe, and China, the Middle East, Eastern Canada, Mexico, and Southern United States. Now, who is in the quartet and who is in excuse me, the Security Council that are trying to get Israel to divide in the two nations and to give away East Jerusalem? Well, it just so happens that it's Russia, the European Union, which is Europe, China, which is on the Security Council, and you have the United States. So you have those entities that are being plagued by these heat swell and the temperatures, and it's causing massive problems, global problems. So let me go on. It says the monthly average world land surface temperature anomaly of 0.89 Celsius, 1.60 Fahrenheit was the 4th warmest June on record. And according to the China Meteorological Administration, June 11th was the 2nd warmest June for the country since records began in 1951. Are you seeing the pattern? Are you listening to what the Holy Spirit is showing you? The temperatures was 1.0 Celsius, 1.8 Fahrenheit, above the average of 19.5 Celsius, 67.1 Fahrenheit. The northwestern province of Gansha had its warmest June on record. And here we go. Some other information about what's happening in the United States. The unrelenting Texas drought that has produced a cruelly ironic twist. Cattle dying from too much water. Agriculture officials in parched Texas said Wednesday that there are no hard numbers on how many head of cattle have died, but reports of deaths from too much water or too little are showing up across the nation's leading cattle producing state. They overdrink because they're thirsty, said the Dr. Robert Spoles of the Texas Veterinary Medical Diagnostic Laboratory in Amarillo. Once they fill up with water, it happens pretty quickly. Producers are losing cattle after moving them from the withered the pastures where water tanks have dried up. This, I mean, it almost looks like a scene from a horror movie, but it's actually the scenes prior to the tribulation that we're seeing. It says, once in new pastures, cattle that die take too much water too quickly. The animals die within minutes, and their carcasses are found near the stock tanks from which they were drinking. And Tom McCuman, a beef cattle specialist with the Texas AgriLife Extension Service in Amarillo, said Texas is coming off its driest 9th-month period ever and its hottest June on record. More than 90% of the state is is in the two most severe drought stages. The cattle deaths are occurring earlier in part because of the lack of forage growth in the pastures. So the scorching sun that we were warned about that was coming, it's beginning to take effect. We are seeing more incidents of heat stress in cattle, he said. More incidents of death and problems with health. As with humans, water intoxication can occur when there's too much water in the body, which disrupts the electrolyte balances in the cells. Death can occur. Typically, an average of cow grazing green forage consumes as much as 80 or 8.4 gallons of water a day from this year. And because drought preluded the forage growth, and there's been a relatively low intake of dry forage, daily water consumption is around 0.6 gallons. That's why stock tanks are so important, especially with this drought, searing temperatures. Now, there's another article also that talks about the heat, and this one says, massive heat wave on the way. Oklahomans urged to pray. While much of the U.S. was cooler, Thursday ahead of another heat wave, temperatures were still around triple digits in Oklahoma and Texas, where waves of heat, including dumping 2,400 pounds of ice into a swimming pool with hundreds of people. The stage is being set for a massive heat wave to develop in the next week as large area and high pressure is anticipated to circulate hot and humid air over much of the central and eastern U.S. The National Weather Service warned. Maximum heat index over much of the central heat index values of at least 100 Fahrenheit are likely across much of the area by the middle of next week, with the heat index values to exceed 110 Fahrenheit possible over portions of these areas. The big story for the coming weekend will be the building heat, added Jim Kenny, the National Weather Service meteorologist. It looks like it's going to be another long-term heat wave. In the thick of the heat wave is Oklahoma, where Governor Mary Phelan asked the Oklahomans to pray for rain this Sunday. The power of prayer is a wonderful thing, and I ask every Oklahoman to look to a greater power this weekend and ask for rain. Now, let me go back and read this again so you get the gist of what she said. I would ask every Oklahoman to look to a greater power this weekend to ask for rain. Let me just say this. If you don't ask in the name of Jesus Christ, not much is going to be delivered to you. And Jesus said in John 14:14, ask in my name and I will do this. And so if you're praying to a foreign God, don't expect rain. As a matter of fact, the country is going against God by trying to divide Israel. So don't expect anything good to come until the policies of this government, the United States government, flips over and they give 100 support to the nation of Israel, and they stop trying to give East Jerusalem away and stop trying to divide the land. Until that happens, don't expect too much rain. As a matter of fact, expect more of what we see from Revelation in the scorching heat. That is a given, and that is what we are going to see. These are the birth pains, the last day birth pains, and they're already on us. Thanks.